Welcome to another episode of the Chief Audit Executive Briefing. Hey, welcome back, my friends. And this week I want to continue our discussion about budgets and about getting the budget and resources that you need. Now, one of the first things is to think about how you're viewed in the organization. Most administrative functions are considered cost centers, okay? There are cost centers and there are investment centers. And unfortunately, most of the people in your organization consider you to be a cost center. In fact, many of you may also believe that you are a cost center. And we're going to talk more about that here in just a minute. Now, what I can tell you is CFOs, Chief Financial Officers, they love to cut cost and they like to make investments. So those of you that are complaining or worried that you're not getting what you need, or that any time the CFO decides they need to cut budget, that they come back and cut your budget, that's why they're doing it. Even when they're cost cutting, they are making investments in other parts of the business. So what that means is you have to go from being a cost center to an investment center. And here's the difference. Investments have a return on investment. It's an ROI type of calculation, okay? So first off, you need to see yourself as an investment center. You have to change your mindset and start realizing that the money that you spend, the money that you've been given in your budget, you need to account for as an investment and show a return on investment. Now, I know a lot of you may be saying, but how do I do that? Well, I'm going to talk more about that later, and that's really the kind of thing that we go into in much more depth in the Chief Audit Executive Forum. So if you'd like to get more information on that, apply and join next time, because these are the kinds of things that we get into in much more detail in that group setting. Now, in order to determine whether you are bringing a return on investment to your organization, that means you actually have to calculate it. So you have to start determining and tracking the value that you are really providing to the organization. So as an example, when you do an audit, if you find a way for maybe, let's say, a process improvement, you need to go back and calculate how much of an impact did that audit actually have on your organization. And there's some simple ways to do it that I'll get to in more detail later. And like I said, I'm going to actually prepare a more detailed little guide that will show you exactly how to do this. But you can look at things like, well, did we save time anywhere? Well, people in your organization, their time is worth something, and you can actually calculate how much you're able to save or maybe increase productivity within your organization. You can also do some things like calculating cost avoidance. So, one of the examples that I've shared sometimes, I can't remember if I've shared with you or on the podcast or where, but, one of the audits that we did, we knew that if the regulator came in and found the same results that we did, we would be given a fine of between $1 and $3 million. So, that project had a return on investment because we were able to avoid certain costs that could have come if the regulator was there. So there's lots of different ways to do that. But I guess the point of today is just to remind you and get you to start thinking about, instead of being a cost center, becoming an investment center. Now, let me share, I was actually talking with one of my friends this week about this exact topic, okay? And he was sharing, he knows a CEO who, the first thing that the CEO does whenever anybody comes to him is he says no. right? Somebody comes in and asks for $100,000. He says, no, show me the ROI, show me the return on investment. And so this actually happened. Okay, there were these two groups that came in. One that was in marketing and said, we want to spend $100,000 on this particular marketing effort. The CEO said, no, show me the ROI. They went back, they calculated, they looked at the numbers, they determined what sort of a return they were going to get on this $100,000, went back to the CEO, and he said yes, and gave them the $100,000. The head of audit in that same organization came to the CEO, wanted to spend $5,000, only $5,000, okay? And the CEO said, no, show me the return on investment. The head of audit went away. 3 years later, she came back with an ROI calculation. 3 years later. Now, if that person is complaining about, oh, I don't have the budget, I don't have the resources on a $5,000 spend because they were too lazy to actually do the ROI calculation and determine what it is, then I'm sorry, it's can't help you, right? But what I'm sharing with you is this: that should have been a very, very easy calculation to do and go back to the CEO within a week. In fact, they should have thought of that before. That's why I'm telling you now, right? So that when you come into the CEO and you say, I'd like to spend $5,000, I'd like to spend 10, 20, 50, whatever the number is, that you already have done your homework, you already know, and you say, you know what? I want to use $5,000 of the organization's money because it's going to save us $25,000. And here's my calculation. If we get this tool, it's going to save $25,000 in the next year. Well, I'm the CEO of a couple of companies. If somebody comes to me with a $5,000 idea that's going to return $20,000, so I get my $5,000 back plus $20,000 within 1 year, I'm going to make that decision all day, and so is your CEO and CFO. We just have to do the work and actually come up with and think of it that way. So again, if you're feeling like a cost center and people are cutting costs and they're cutting your budget, what you need to do is start thinking like an investment center. Get that clear in your head first off, that everything you do should be an investment and have a return to your organization. And then knowing how to go through, calculate that, and show that is going to help. Because the next time that the CFO comes along and wants to cut costs, if they see you as an investment center, you're not going to be the first one that they're going to try and cut. That's all I got this week, my friends. We're going to continue this discussion further. So check in, make sure and be checking your emails for future episodes of the Chief Audit Executive Briefing. Have a great rest of your week.